Alex and Riley had always loved late-night jogging, but tonight, the quiet streets and familiar trails would turn into a nightmare they could never escape. I always told myself that jogging at night was the best part of my day. The streets were quiet, the air was cooler, and the world felt like it belonged to me alone. During the day, everything was chaotic, cars honking, kids screaming, people brushing past me in a rush. But at night, it was peaceful, the kind of peace you could sink into like a warm bath. I would put on my headphones, lace up my running shoes, and let the sound of my footsteps drown out the noise of my thoughts. It was routine, something I had done countless times before, and I never questioned it. Until that night. I noticed the change the second I stepped outside. There was no real reason for it, but I felt it immediately. The air was colder than usual, not just cool but sharp, biting against my skin. The silence seemed heavier, pressing against my ears until I could hear nothing but my own breathing. Streetlights lined the road, stretching far ahead of me, but several of them were broken, their flickering bulbs giving the illusion of movement in the distance. Shadows twitched across the pavement, stretching unnaturally long and thin as I jogged past. The rhythm of my shoes against the pavement usually calmed me, but that night it sounded different, louder, echoing in a way I couldn't explain. The sound bounced back at me as if the world around me were empty, hollow. I tried to shake off the feeling, focusing instead on my breathing, my steady pace, the way the cool wind brushed against my face. I told myself I was just being paranoid. I told myself I'd been inside too long, my brain exaggerating everything, but the longer I ran, the harder it became to believe. That was when I heard it. At first, I thought I was imagining things, some trick of my mind filling in the silence. But no, the sound was there, faint, almost hidden beneath the rhythm of my steps. It was another footstep, not quite in sync with mine, but close, like an echo with a heartbeat of delay. I stopped abruptly, pretending to stretch, and my ears strained into the night. The street was still, my breath the only sound. My chest rose and fell in sharp bursts as I stood there, waiting, listening. The footstep was gone. Reluctantly, I started jogging again, forcing myself into the same pace as before. My nerves buzzed, my body tense, but after a few blocks I almost convinced myself it had been nothing, until the sound returned. The footstep was back, always just behind me, always keeping the same distance no matter how fast or slow I moved. I quickened my pace, heart pounding harder, and the sound quickened too. When I slowed down, it slowed. The realization hit me like ice. Someone was following me. I whipped my head around, scanning the street behind me empty. Every driveway, every corner, every patch of grass was barren. There wasn't a single person in sight. The streetlights hummed above me, and far away, a dog barked, but there was nothing else. No shadow, no figure, nothing that could have made those sounds. My skin prickled and I forced myself to keep going, this time pushing harder toward the park trail where the air always felt fresher, safer somehow. The moment I stepped onto the trail, the footsteps stopped. It was as if whoever or whatever had followed me had chosen not to enter. My breath came out ragged as I slowed to a jog, relief creeping into my veins. The gravel crunched beneath my shoes, and the trees whispered gently with the breeze. It almost felt normal again, almost, that I saw them. On the ground ahead of me, illuminated by a broken lamp that flickered weakly above, were footprints, bare feet. They glistened as if freshly made, damp under the pale glow. My stomach twisted as I realized how fresh they looked. I crouched slightly, staring at the trail of prints that stretched forward into the woods. They weren't spaced evenly like a jogger's stride. Some dragged, some pressed deep into the dirt as if with effort, like the person who made them was limping or struggling. My throat went dry. I stood frozen, staring at the prints, every instinct in my body screaming at me to turn around, to go home, to forget I had ever seen them, but I didn't move. I just stood there, locked in place, my heart thundering, my mind buzzing with a question I couldn't shake. Why were they leading into the woods? And if someone was already inside, where were they now? I swallowed hard and forced myself forward, each step heavier than the last. The footprints gleamed faintly in the flickering light, beckoning me deeper, pulling me away from the safety of the trail. My breaths grew shallow, sharp, painful. By the time I reached the point where the footprints disappeared into the dark line of trees, my body trembled. I didn't want to follow, but I couldn't look away either. The forest loomed before me, the shadows shifting like living things. Then I made the mistake of glancing down. The prints didn't just lead ahead anymore. There were more now. Another set had appeared, pressed into the earth, but these weren't going forward. They started right behind me. And they were fresh. The footprints shimmered faintly in the damp soil, each one so clear it looked like the ground had been pressed just moments before. They weren't mine, yet they started exactly where I was standing, as if someone had been behind me the entire time, mimicking my movements in silence. My pulse pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. I wanted to turn and run back home, to leave the trail behind, but the thought of facing that empty street again, the echoing footsteps, the flickering lamps, felt even worse, so I followed the footprints instead. They pulled me forward like invisible strings, deeper into the trail, then into the forest itself. The air thickened as the trees swallowed the path. The night sounds I was used to, crickets, distant traffic, the occasional dog, were gone. Even the breeze had died, leaving only a stillness that pressed against my skin like a suffocating weight. My shoes crunched against fallen leaves and twigs, the sound unnaturally loud in the silence, like the forest was amplifying every move I made. The deeper I went, the more the footprints changed. At first, they were uneven, dragging, almost limping. But then they began to spread apart, longer strides, deeper impressions, as if whoever was walking had suddenly gained strength. The thought unsettled me. I couldn't help imagining someone out here, weak and struggling at first, only to suddenly become stronger the more they moved. Like the woods themselves were feeding them. The trees pressed closer together, tall trunks leaning in as though listening. The shadows they cast stretched over the soil like dark veins. I forced myself forward, telling myself I would just follow the prints for a little while, just enough to prove to myself that there was nothing here, that it was all in my head. But every step only pushed me deeper into a place that felt wrong, a place I shouldn't be. My breaths grew ragged, burning my lungs, but I didn't stop. Then I saw it. Hanging from a low branch just ahead was a single running shoe. At first I thought someone had tossed it there as a joke, but as I stepped closer my stomach dropped. It wasn't just any shoe. It was my brand, my exact color, the same model I had laced onto my feet earlier that night. Only this one was ruined. The fabric was torn, clawed apart in jagged lines. The sole was ripped open, the laces frayed as if they had been shredded by something sharp. A sickening chill spread through me. I hadn't lost a shoe. I hadn't tossed one into the woods. And yet, here it was, dangling inches above my head, swaying slightly as though someone had just placed it there. I stumbled backward, my chest tightening, but my eyes stayed locked on that shoe. I didn't want to touch it. I didn't want to get closer. That was when I looked down. Another set of footprints had appeared. They weren't leading ahead this time, they were behind me. The soil where I had just stepped was now marked by bare, wet impressions, heavy and deep, as though someone was standing directly where I had been only seconds ago. I scanned the trees, panic flooding me, but nothing moved. The forest was dead still. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something stood just out of sight, close enough to touch. My mind screamed at me to run, and I listened. I bolted forward, tearing through the brush, ignoring the sting of branches whipping against my arms. My lungs ached and my legs burned, but the fear pushing me forward was stronger than the pain. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The thought of seeing someone or something chasing me was worse than the thought of not knowing. Still, no matter how fast I ran, I couldn't shake the feeling that the footsteps were with me, not just behind me now, but all around. Sometimes I swore I heard the crunch of leaves off to the side, sometimes just a fraction ahead. It was as if the footprints were multiplying, circling me, waiting for the right moment to close in. Finally, I stumbled onto a stretch of the path where the trees broke just enough to let the moonlight spill down. I bent forward, clutching my knees, gasping for air, sweat dripping into my eyes. My chest heaved as I tried to steady myself, to think clearly, to find a way out. The pale light pooled across the dirt, and for a moment, I almost felt relief. Then I noticed the ground again. Everywhere I looked, the soil was marked. Dozens of footprints pressed into the dirt, all barefoot, all fresh, crisscrossing in wild directions like a swarm had moved through. My breath caught in my throat. The prints weren't random, they weren't leading anywhere. They were circling, and I was standing in the center. I stood frozen in the middle of the path, my body shaking as my eyes darted across the ground. The prints surrounded me, dozens of them, maybe more, circling in uneven patterns. Each one pressed fresh and damp into the soil, as if someone had just walked them seconds before. My chest rose and fell too quickly, my lungs struggling to keep up. I told myself to move, to run, to do anything but stand there, yet my legs felt heavy, almost locked in place, as though the dirt itself didn't want to let me go. Then something shifted in the silence. Not a sound, not a movement I could clearly point to, but an unmistakable sensation that I wasn't standing alone. The hairs on the back of my neck lifted, and I felt it eyes, countless unseen eyes, watching from the dark between the trees. I forced myself to take one step forward, then another, each movement stiff and shaky, my ears straining for the faintest noise. My shoes scraped against the path, the sound unnaturally loud in the suffocating stillness. The footprints trailed ahead again, weaving into the woods. Against every instinct screaming in my mind, I followed. My legs moved faster now, carrying me forward in a blind panic. The branches overhead clawing at the sky like twisted hands. The further I ran, the less familiar everything became. I had jogged this park for years, but now the trail bent in strange angles, curving where it had never curved, leading me deeper into a place that didn't feel real. I kept going until my lungs burned and my throat felt raw. I finally slowed, stumbling to a halt, gasping for breath. The trail stretched on endlessly, vanishing into shadow. I turned around, expecting to see the glow of a streetlight in the distance, or even the faint outline of the city skyline. But there was nothing. Behind me, the path looked the same as it did in front of me, dark, endless, unfamiliar. My heart dropped into my stomach. Somehow I had gone too far. Somehow the park had swallowed me whole. Desperate for light, I yanked my phone from my pocket. Relief flooded me when the screen glowed, but it lasted less than a second. The screen flickered violently, white static tearing across it, before going black. The battery was gone. I had charged it fully before leaving, but now it was dead, as if something had drained it in an instant. My hand shook as I shoved it back into my pocket, my pulse hammering. Up ahead, a faint glow shimmered through the trees. For a moment, hope sparked in me. Maybe it was a park lamp, maybe a house beyond the trail. I stumbled forward, pushing through the branches until the light grew clearer. Relief turned cold in my veins when I saw it wasn't a lamp at all. It was a lantern, an old-fashioned metal frame with a weak flame flickering inside. It dangled from a branch, swaying gently, even though there was no wind. I stepped closer, and that was when I noticed the object lying beneath it, a shirt, crumpled and soaked in mud. My breath caught when I recognized it. It was my shirt, not the one I wore now, but the exact same style, the same color, the same brand. Only this one was torn down the middle, ripped in jagged lines that looked too violent to be accidental. My head spun, my stomach churning. I reached down without meaning to, my fingers trembling as they hovered over the fabric. Then I stopped, every muscle locking tight. Something was breathing near me. I heard it clearly, slow, deep breaths, right against my ear, brushing warm against my skin. I froze, too terrified to turn, too terrified to move. The sound was familiar, horribly familiar. It was my own breathing. My chest rose and fell in panic, and the sound behind me rose and fell with the same rhythm, perfectly in sync. The air seemed to shift, heavy and cold, pressing against me like an invisible weight. I shut my eyes, praying that when I opened them the lantern and the shirt would be gone, that the forest would be normal again. But when I opened them, nothing had changed. The lantern still swung lightly above me. The torn shirt still lay in the dirt, soaked and ruined, and the sound of my own breath still came from somewhere just over my shoulder. I didn't dare turn around. I just stood there, trembling, my body locked in place, knowing without doubt that something stood close enough to touch me. I couldn't force myself to look back. My instinct screamed that if I turned, if I faced whatever stood so close, I wouldn't be able to run at all. My legs shook beneath me, my muscles locking tight as though my own body wanted me frozen. My breath came in shallow gasps, echoing not only in my chest, but from the unseen mouth just behind my shoulder. The sound was in perfect rhythm with mine, like something was wearing my breathing as a mask. With a sudden jolt of desperation, I forced my body into motion. I ran, crashing through the darkness, my arms tearing through low branches and my shoes pounding against the uneven trail. Every footstep thudded too loud, each one echoing like the forest itself was amplifying the sound. I didn't dare stop, didn't dare look behind me. I wanted distance, any distance at all, between me and whatever stalked me. But no matter how fast I ran, the woods didn't change. The path twisted and bent in endless loops, and when I finally slowed, panting, I realized I was back in the same place. The lantern swayed on its branch, the torn shirt lay in the dirt, and the air was thick with the smell of damp earth. My heart plummeted as the realization sank in. I hadn't escaped. I had only circled back, dragged by something I couldn't see. I tried again. I sprinted harder, veering off the trail, forcing my way through the trees themselves. Branches clawed my skin, scratching across my arms and face until I felt warm blood bead against my skin, but I didn't care. I only wanted to break free. The forest resisted me at every step, the undergrowth grabbing at my legs, the trees closing in tighter. I shoved through with everything I had until I stumbled forward into a sudden clearing. At first I thought I had made it out. The open space felt like a relief after being trapped beneath the suffocating canopy. But then I saw the ground. My stomach twisted and I stumbled back a step. The soil was littered with running shoes, hundreds of them, scattered across the dirt like discarded shells. Some were caked with mud, some torn and frayed, others stiff and stained dark with something that didn't look like dirt at all. They were all the same style as mine, the same brand, the same color. I bent down slowly, unable to stop myself, reaching for one near my feet. Its fabric peeled back with rot, the sole splitting apart in my hand. My throat tightened, bile rising. These weren't just random shoes, they were like echoes of mine, versions of what I wore now, left to decay. My head whipped up at the sound of a crunch. Leaves shifted at the edge of the clearing. My breath caught in my throat as my eyes adjusted to the shadows. Figures stood there, just beyond the tree line. I counted 3 at first, then 6, then more, their shapes too many to number. They stood motionless, pale and barefoot, their bodies thin and long, their faces swallowed in shadow. My stomach clenched tighter when I realized they were all wearing the same shirt I had on, the exact same color, the exact same design, every detail matching. It was like staring at an army of distorted reflections, waiting just outside the circle of open ground. The figures swayed faintly, their bodies rocking back and forth as though moved by a silent wind. I strained to hear something, anything, but the forest remained mute. No insects, no rustle, no sound beyond the thud of my heart and the rasp of my breathing. For a long moment, none of them moved closer. They just stood, watching, swaying, their heads tilted in unnatural angles. Then one of them took a step forward. The movement was slow, deliberate, the bare foot pressing into the soil with an awful weight. Another stepped after it, then another. Their bodies twitched in jerks, each movement sharp, like broken marionettes being tugged by invisible strings. I backed away instinctively, stumbling over the pile of shoes beneath me. My hands scraped against rubber and fabric, the smell of rot filling my nose. My chest heaved as I pushed myself backward, but there was nowhere to go. The figures were closing in, step by uneven step, their pale outlines edging nearer the lantern glow. For the first time I saw glimpses of their faces, and my blood ran cold. They weren't strangers at all. Each face looked eerily familiar, the features warped but recognizable. The cheekbones, the nose, the jaw. It was mine. Every single one of them wore my face. I tried to scream, but the sound stuck in my throat. My lungs pushed air but no voice came out, as if the forest itself had stolen it. The clearing spun, the figures swaying closer, their identical shirts whispering faintly in the breeze. My vision blurred, my body trembling so violently it felt like my bones might rattle apart. And then I realized none of them were blinking. I couldn't move. My legs had turned to lead. My lungs refused to fill with air. The figures swayed closer, step by jerking step, their bare feet sinking into the soft soil. Their shirts were the same as mine, their faces the same as mine, and every movement felt deliberate, like they were imitating me perfectly. The cold of the night seemed to seep into my bones, and my hands trembled so violently I could barely hold them in front of me. I tried to scream, tried to call out for help, but no sound escaped. The forest had stolen my voice, or perhaps I had lost it myself in sheer terror. I could hear my heart beat in my ears, a hammering rhythm that drowned out everything else. The lantern swung above me, its flame casting shadows that danced across the figures' identical faces, exaggerating the lines, the eyes, the uncanny symmetry. My skin crawled. I stumbled backward, desperate to put distance between myself and them, but the clearing felt smaller with every step. It wasn't expanding like a normal space. The more I tried to escape, the closer they came, closing in on every side. I tripped over a pile of shoes, sprawling into the dirt. The smell of mud, sweat, and decay filled my nostrils, choking me, and I scrambled backward, barely lifting my hands to protect my face. One of the figures moved faster now, jerking unnaturally as it approached. My heart froze when I realized it wasn't just approaching, it was bending down toward me. Its hand reached out, pale and thin, fingers brushing the soil near my chest. I wanted to flinch, to push it away, to run again, but my body refused to obey. My thoughts screamed at me, but my legs wouldn't move. My arms felt heavy, like I was trapped in some invisible grip. Then I saw it, the face of the figure closest to me. It was me. Every scar, every tiny imperfection, every line mirrored my own, but the expression was wrong. The lips were stretched into a grin I had never made, one that felt like it belonged to something inhuman. Its eyes bore into mine, empty but knowing, and I felt a cold hand of fear press against my chest, as if it were stealing the very air I breathed. The other figures began to advance now, swaying and twitching in a silent, coordinated motion. Their movements were jerky, yet terrifyingly smooth, like dolls being controlled by a force I couldn't see. My stomach churned as I realized I was surrounded. There was no way out, no path, no light, no escape, just me, the shoes, and the endless copies of myself. I pressed my palms to the ground, trying to push myself up, trying to run one last time, but my body refused. My vision blurred, darkness creeping along the edges, swallowing the forest around me. The last thing I noticed before the shadows consumed me completely was my double S hand tightening over my chest. I felt my breath being pulled out of me, drawn into the figure's cold, unnatural grip, and then stillness. I don't know how long I was out, or if I had actually lost consciousness at all. When I opened my eyes, the clearing looked different, empty. The shoes were gone, the figures gone, and the lantern had fallen, extinguished. The forest was quiet again, the night air cool and still, like nothing had ever happened. My heart raced, and I forced myself to rise, shaking, unsure if I was alive or trapped in some endless nightmare. I stumbled forward, desperate to find a familiar path, desperate to get home, and then I saw my reflection in a small puddle on the trail. At first I thought it was a relief, a reminder that I was still me, but as I looked closer, my reflection moved differently. It didn't mimic me perfectly. It smiled when I didn't, blinked when I kept my eyes open. A chill ran through me. I stumbled backward, tripping over roots and rocks. The forest seemed to breathe around me, the shadows moving subtly, just at the edge of my vision. I couldn't tell if it was my imagination, or if the doubles were still watching, still waiting. And then I heard the footsteps, soft at first, distant, but they grew louder, keeping pace with my own. I didn't dare look behind me. I didn't dare run. My chest tightened as I realized the impossible. The footsteps weren't in front of me or beside me, they were inside me. I can still hear them sometimes. When the world is quiet, the night pressing against my window, the echoes of my own jog, the rhythm of footsteps that aren't mine, and I know, deep down, that one day, when I step outside again, the forest will be waiting, the shoes will be there, the lantern will swing, and my double will be ready to take my place. I never made it home that night, and part of me wonders if I ever truly left the forest at all.